Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the third workshop of the fall semester of 2022. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to have you here. We're going to get started in 10 minutes. So if you're watching the recording of this, please feel free to fast forward 10 minutes. We are going to get started very, very shortly. I'm going to send out this link to my colleagues, Sharon and Chelsea, to email to everybody. But yeah, we got a good workshop in store for you all this evening. As I mentioned, we're going to get started in about 10 minutes. We're going to cover some good things. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat section. Just say who you are, where you're from. We are going to get started soon. Alrighty, I am chugging water from my giant jug. I don't know how y'all keep hydrated, but this is the way I go about keeping hydrated. It's like my accountability jug. It's almost like I know if I've drinking all of it, I've drinking the amount of water I need to drink in a day. Feel like if I don't have it, it's easy for me to get dehydrated. Oh yeah. Oh man. So I just got back from my honeymoon. I did some world travels. My wife and I went to Thailand and Vietnam for our honeymoon. It was awesome. It was a blast. If any of y'all who are watching right now, if y'all have done any international traveling, post in the chat section. I'd love to learn about it. But yeah, for me, I loved both countries. We were in Bangkok to start our trip, and then we went to Koh Samet, not Koh Samui, but Koh Samet, which is a little island about 2 hours southeast of Bangkok. And yeah, it was awesome, very relaxing, very chill. Bangkok was a really big city. But it was cool to just experience what that was like. Then we went to Hanoi, which is on the north side of Vietnam. We love that city. In fact, I think Hanoi was probably our favorite city of all the cities we went to on our trip. But the Vietnamese food, man, just smashed it out of the water. It was incredible. I mean, I love Thai food, but it's interesting. Thai food in the United States is much different than Thai food in Thailand. Like Thai food in the United States is all about pad Thai and pad see ew and pad ki mao. And I think that's probably popular in Thailand. But what I found in almost every single place was essentially every dish seemed to formulate around fish sauce with those red and green chili peppers, they're super spicy, but it's super delicious, super tasty. If you like tingly spice, that's how I would describe it. It's awesome. It's really, really good. And I had, pork, fish, meat, like that. It was really, really good. And just the street food was awesome. You just get like meat on a stick that they've been cooking over coals on the sidewalk. Super tasty, super, super delicious. But the Vietnamese food, it was just like so much French influence. I don't know if y'all have ever had banh mi before. Essentially, banh mi is a Vietnamese sandwich. It's got like tons of butter with like pate on it, with meat and cucumbers and carrots. And some places they put like pickled daikon on it, which is a vegetable. Sometimes they'll put like hot peppers in it, like chili peppers. But overall, it's just a fantastic sandwich. One of the best sandwiches I've ever had. And yeah, I think the French bread makes it. I don't know, like I feel like I've had banh mi in the States and the bread was really, really thick. And in Vietnam, it was just light and fluffy while crispy on the outside. I don't know how they made it. Actually, my best friend who said he's been there, he said the way they make it is they make it out of rice flour instead of wheat flour. And I guess in the States, we make French bread out of wheat flour, makes it a little heavier and less crispy. I don't know. That's his theory. I've got no idea if it's actually in fact accurate, but there's something about that banh mi in Vietnam, which is just absolutely incredible. So I highly recommend it. And yeah, anyways, those are the cool food stuff. We also had some bancha. Bancha is it's like a stew, it's like soup, like a broth, where they'll take meat patties, kind of like a meatball almost, but in a smaller version of it, and they'll put it in the soup, and then they'll give you the most fresh, fragrant veggies and like spices like basil and mint, tons of mint. And you just kind of grab it by your hand and stick it in your broth, and it's and bean sprout, and you just stick it in. It's super tasty, super flavorful. But anyways, we're gonna get started in 4 minutes. I'm gonna actually contact my colleague Sharon to make sure that we had the email sent out to everybody with this link. My phone's currently charging. Oh, mentorship links. Okay, cool. Sharon, you sent it out. Perfect. Awesome. So yeah. So we'll get more people hopefully here within the next few more minutes. Y'all can hear me ramble about the food in Vietnam and Thailand. There was really good pho in Vietnam as well. I don't know if y'all have ever had pho before, but it's also similar, like a soup, but with noodles and eggs and just good meats and vegetables in it. It's super great. But the funny thing is in both Thailand and Vietnam, especially Vietnam though, they have these little stools, I want to say 6 inches off the ground, like a true squat. You're squatting in these stools. Your knees are almost up to your chest height, and little mini kids tables, like children's tables. I don't know how else to describe it, but you're on the sidewalk with busy like cars going by you in Vietnam, and that's where you're eating your food. And I guess from one of our tour guides, he had mentioned the reason why these food vendors will do that is because technically, I guess it's illegal to serve food on the sidewalk. But by the way, everybody in Vietnam does it. Most stores, like they have a small little shop, but most of them will cook the food on the sidewalk and they'll serve the food on the sidewalk. And but if, let's say, God forbid, the police were to come around to be doing inspections, they've got the little kiddie chairs and tables so they can quickly and easily scoop them all up, throw them into their shop, and then they're not technically breaking the Vietnamese rules. But that's something that I thought was super interesting about Vietnam was almost every street spot had a sidewalk serving area. In fact, actually, speaking of sidewalks, they were not meant for walking. Sidewalks in Vietnam were meant for parking your moped, serving people food. You walked on the street essentially. There are also like very few crosswalks. So the way that you cross the street is you would just like put your hand out in front of you, kind of wave it around and just walk. Don't even look at the cars. They're going to stop and go around you. Just make no sudden movements. Don't run. Don't like make irky jerky motions, and the cars and mopeds will stop for you. Like hordes of people will stop for you as you cross the street. At first it was really nerve-wracking, but eventually you just get used to it. You just get eventually just get used to it. You're just eating a sandwich, having a conversation, whatever. Don't even pay any attention. Just walk across the street and everybody will brake for you as you walk. So we never got hit, but we certainly had close calls, and it's the way people do it. And it's different. And then Hoi An is a city in the middle of Vietnam we went to. It's right near Da Nang. I feel like it's the banh mi capital of the world, as well as like the tailoring capital of the world. They had like suit shops and dress shops on every street. Like every third shop was a dress shop. And then also like every fifth shop was a banh mi shop. And I mean, just incredible banh mi sandwiches. So anyways, if y'all have ever done any international travels, post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about them, and yeah, share them with us in the group. I'd love to Love to hear about it. See if y'all have any other interesting experiences. And we finished off our trip in Ho Chi Minh City. We checked out the War Remnants Museum, and that was a really interesting experience. Learning about the Vietnam War from the Vietnamese perspective is very it was a gut punch. It's pretty crazy and scary to think about that. But anyways, it is officially 6 o'clock here in Austin, Texas, which means it's 7 on the East Coast, 5 in Denver, 4 on the West Coast. Welcome to the third mentor workshop of this lovely fall 2022 semester. It's starting to cool off. Seems like around the country. I know it certainly is here. But let's dive in, y'all. So, topic for this workshop today, we're going to cover a couple of core things here. So, by the way, if y'all have any questions, post them in the comment section. But during this workshop, we're going to cover suggested questions you can ask your student to build a deeper relationship with them, how to get your student to open up more. So hopefully by this time you've had your first meeting. If not, no worries. But you're probably in this process of trying to think to yourself, how can I go about getting my student to open up more to me in terms of building a deeper mentor relationship? I'm going to give you some tips and pointers on how to go about doing that in this workshop today. How to help your student with accountability and suggestions, questions you can get them to think about accountability, and then how to help your student broaden their perspective. So let's dive in. By the way, if y'all have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat section. The three keys for being successful as a mentor is your strategy, your story, and your state. We covered them in the first couple of workshops. I'm going to reinvigorate them today. I'm going to reiterate them today. State is all about physically. How do you feel? What is the energy you're coming in with for this mentor meeting? Are you coming in tired, sad, mad, angry, dejected, or are you coming in with energy? I think it's so critical that we are conscientious of our physical state for any activity we go into. I think it's easy to think we can wing it or not be prepared or not be conscientious of it. But I think if we take a moment to reflect and regulate and think to ourselves, am I coming into a peak state for this situation or am I not? One key way that you can go about doing it is fake laughing. So I'm a big fan of the 30-second fake laugh. So if you go for 30 seconds, we can practice it together right now. If you go, if you fake laugh for 30 seconds, you will eventually begin to real laugh and you will not know why. What you're doing is you're tricking your brain to release endorphins to make your brain feel happy. And you don't know why. You can try to attempt the Adam Sandler fake laugh. That's kind of what I was going for right there. But if you want to know how to make yourself happy, fake laugh for 30 seconds, you'll be able to create temporary happiness in your mind, in your state, in your physical being. It's a pretty cool Jedi mind trick that I learned in a Tony Robbins event called Unleash the Power Within. So give it a shot. If you're ever feeling down or in a rut or whatever, fake laugh, 30 seconds, give it a shot. Story. So what is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? That's something that's so critical. What kind of mental headspace are you coming to? What is the story you're telling yourself? Why are you going to be successful as a mentor? I think that's so critical that we identify that, or really for anything that you do in your life, in your career, in your work, in your family, in anything you do. If you have a negative story you tell yourself, you're unlikely to be successful. Actually, we got a personal story about that today. So at Ambition Emotion, we've got an incredible marketing person named Brittany. She is great at her work. And one of the areas that I did not do a good enough job in was I did not give her enough positive feedback to let her know that she's doing an amazing job. And so we had a conversation earlier today and she was like, hey, I don't know if I'm doing that good of a job. I think it might make sense that we move on and have somebody else like take over my role because I just don't know if I'm performing well enough. And I was like, is that the thing that's frustrating you? Because I think you're doing amazing. But so often we tell ourselves stories for why we don't think we're successful. And by the way, a lot of it's my fault because when we first brought Brittany on to help us with our marketing and social media, we had set some initial goals. One of those goals was to be able to book 10 conversations from our social media effort every single month. And ultimately what we ended up realizing was that was probably an unrealistic goal, but I didn't do a good job as a leader to say, hey, we need to adjust our goals and aspirations. And so she kept holding herself to this metric, which we weren't even close to hitting, but that was okay because there were so many other positive benefits that came from her positive social media work and things that she was doing, that I did not do a good enough job of recognizing and acknowledging. And so sometimes it's easy to tell ourselves a story for why we're not being successful. But I think what's so critical is that no matter what, when we're going to any circumstance, if we can tell ourselves a story for why we will and can and are successful, we're much more likely to be successful ourselves. Because if we tell ourselves that we're no good, or we're not going to be effective, or we're not great, we're going to manifest whatever outcome we set for ourselves. So I just think it's it's really critical that we tell ourselves positive stories. But also from a leadership perspective, it's really great if you're leading a team or people within your own organization. It's really critical that we give our people feedback that they're doing an amazing job as well. So shout out to Sharon and Chelsea. You both are doing an awesome job as well. I think that you're watching this video right now. I really appreciate you both helping spread the word about our workshop and getting the message out there for the students and the alumni mentees and the mentors in this program. You're doing awesome. So I wanted to publicly thank you in this recording today that I think you're doing great. Last key is strategy. What is the strategy that you use to be a great mentor? So it's the questions you ask, it's the intros you make, it's the way that you help them rethink the way that they're handling their challenges. Sometimes the biggest help you can give to a student is just helping them put their biggest, most BS limiting beliefs out into the ether. So often, by the way, everybody's got limiting beliefs. Everybody got limiting beliefs. As a mentor, one of the best things you can do to help a student with a limiting belief is to help them pull it out of them. Like whenever you hear students say something about why they can't do something, or why they're no good, or why they can't possibly achieve something, almost always there's a limiting belief behind it that's BS. And you know it, I know, we all know it. But what's really critical is that we get our student that we're mentoring to actually share it. By sharing it out to the ether about what's holding us back, that's the biggest battle to actually acknowledging how crazy and ridiculous and oftentimes stupid that limiting belief is. So anyways, long story short, it's critical that we as mentors come in with different strategies and constantly have an experimental mindset when it comes to being the best mentor we can be, because being a great mentor is not a static one-size-fits-all state. It's something that's constantly adapting and changing over time based on what's going on with the people we're mentoring. So anyways, that's something that I really want to reiterate and have y'all keep in mind for your relationships. So any questions on any of that? Awesome. So let's dive into our topic. Excuse me. How to build a deeper relationship with your student. One of the big questions, a question I love to ask, this is a question that I love to ask to build a deep relationship with somebody that I'm mentoring, or really anybody that I really want to get on a deeper level with, is tell me your story starting with kindergarten. Now, I know it sounds weird to ask that question, tell me your story starting with kindergarten, but the reason why it's such a great question to ask is because so often we think about our professional careers, or we think about our lives and our identity as what we've done over the last, I don't know, year or two. And we don't give any credence to what got us to where we're at today. But so often things that happened in our childhood and elementary school and middle school and high school help formulate who we are today and how we got to here. So I think it's really critical that we ask our student this question, tell me your story starting with kindergarten, because then it can tell you a lot about who they are. But it gives you a lens into their personal goals and drivers. Then I love to ask the question, what is your dream career and how do you plan on getting there? I love asking that question after the tell me your story starting with kindergarten question, because it gives us an idea of where they were, where they came from, and where they want to go, where they're going. And then I like to ask the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So it's so often easy to set these big, hairy, audacious goals for our dream outcome, but then we struggle to hit the intermediary steps of like, what does it take to get to that level? I think if we can identify where we want to be in 5 years, that can help us create a tangible process roadmap for where we want to go with our lives and our career. So I think that's a great way to build a deeper relationship with your student and get to better know them on a deeper level. I also like to ask a question. Tell me a story about a time when you really wanted something and you ended up realizing that you didn't want it that much, but actually wanted something else. Regardless of whether or not they got it, what did they learn from it? So for example, somebody I was in a mentoring relationship with one time shared with me that as a kid, he really wanted a dirt bike. And his parents wouldn't let him get a dirt bike. He was, I think, maybe 13 or 14 or 15 at the time. He really wanted a dirt bike. He wanted to go off-roading. That was the thing he wanted the most in the world. And his parents were like, no, it's dangerous. We're not going to get you a dirt bike. No way. It's expensive. We're just not going to get you a dirt bike. And he wanted it and he wanted it and he wanted it. And so finally his parents said, okay, well, if you can earn up the money to pay for yourself to get a dirt bike, we'll let you get a dirt bike. So he worked jobs. He worked side jobs. He worked every moment he could to save up for this dirt bike. And finally, by I think it was his junior or senior year of high school, he had enough money to buy the dirt bike. But by that point in time, he realized that it wasn't the dirt bike that he wanted. There's something deeper. For him, he wanted to impress other girls. So for him, he wanted to have a dirt bike to impress other girls and meet other people and that sort of thing. That was the thing that drove him. But he realized that his goals had changed. And so he ended up not getting the dirt bike. But it's interesting. It's always interesting when you hear a story from somebody about learning. You learn a lot about a person and who they are and what drives them and what they were willing to do to go about getting that outcome, whether or not they actually got the outcome or not in the end place. It's just a cool way to get to know somebody on a deeper level. And ideally, you can share a story with them about something similar as well. But the point is that these questions you can ask your student to open up and get out of the facade that everything has to be perfect. So often, students think that there's this linear path in our careers, like that, oh, we go to college, we get good grades, we get a job, we get an internship, we then do this, we do that, we get promoted, we become a manager, we become the executive, whatever. But it's not like that. The careers are circular. They're up, they're down, they're sideways, they're diagonal, they're impacted by personal things. There's so many things going on. And I think if we can ask them these questions about their own imperfections and then sharing ours, I think we're much more likely to have a really productive, like, mentor relationship with our student. Any questions about that? Cool, awesome. So let's talk about the next subject here, which is how to help your student with accountability. So there are 5 core questions that I love to help a student with, helping them with accountability. This is a great question these are a great set of questions that follow the original set of questions that I just shared with you about getting to know them on a deeper level, because ultimately when you get to know somebody on a deeper level, you get to learn about a lot of their limiting beliefs, some of which are BS, some of which, they don't think are BS, but are still holding them back. This is where getting them accountable is so critical, because it's easy to point fingers. It's easy to point the blame at other people for why you're not able to get the things you want to get in this life. And so I like to ask these 5 questions to get them thinking deeper about it. And it's not about holding them to task or putting them under the knife or anything like that. What you're really trying to do is get them think deeper about their own life and what they're trying to work towards, and ideally get them to realize that they're in a lot more control than they maybe are giving themselves credit for. So the first question I like to ask is, when have you persisted and had it pay off for you? I love to ask this question because it allows them to think about a time that they have worked hard and helped them accomplish something. So often when we are not accountable for our own actions, it's because we are creating excuses for why other people are not allowing us to achieve the things we want to achieve. So by having them think of an example of when they persisted and had it pay off for them, it shows them that there is power in hard work. There's power in persistence. There's power in putting your mind to something and really sticking to it. The second question I like to ask is, what specific actions do you need to take to meet your goal? This is something that I love to ask because ultimately it gets students, or anybody for that matter, that you're mentoring or anybody that you're working with, to get in the mindset that this goal is possible, that this goal is reasonable and realistic and something that can be achieved. But what do they need to do to meet that goal? It allows them to fully formulate it and set their own action plan. So often, we as mentors feel the need to jump in and give an action plan to our student for what they need to be doing, when in reality, if they're not coming up with the action plan themselves, the likelihood that it gets achieved is very, very low. But if they say, I need to do this, 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 and this, likelihood they actually do that is much higher because it was their idea. Question 3, who can help you be accountable? And by the way, it can be you, the mentor, but it can be somebody else. It could be a parent, it could be a friend, it could be somebody else. In fact, I encourage that because then it allows to bring other people into this goal setting process. If we're bringing other people into the goal setting process, there's power in putting a message out to the ether. The more people that know about our goals, the more likely we are to achieve them because they become part of our identity. So if we can say, hey, who can help you be accountable? you are now bringing somebody else into the fold that's going to ask them questions about this goal. And if they can actually do that, they're much more likely to actually hit that goal because they know other people are thinking and relying on them to get it. 4, what systems can you put in place to help you follow through? It's very similar to the who can help you be accountable, but this is a great way of helping them tangibly say, I need to start anchoring. I need to start doing this. I need to start doing that. I need to have a check and balance. I need to, by the end of the week, make sure that I've got everything on my list checked off. And if I don't, I cannot start my weekend. I don't know, whatever rules they want to put on themselves for why, or for what they need to do to help them follow through, I think is great. And by the way, notice that question does not say, what systems can you put in place to help you be accountable? I think sometimes it can become a little circular in terms of the message we're trying to put through. So by saying help you follow through, it can help them think about it in a different way. I think language has so much power, and so often we associate different meanings to different words that in our minds when we're saying them, we mean the same thing. The 5th question I like to ask is, what are the costs / rewards of and of not following through on your commitment? So what are the costs of not following through on my commitments? What are the rewards of following through on my commitments? So we can be very clear about what are we going to try to get and what do we risk losing. When we are very clear about that, we are much more likely to follow through because that's our why. That is our why. That is our carrot and stick. That is the thing that drives us to get the thing we want to get going. No, don't get me wrong. We want to identify some intrinsic drivers and motivators, but some extrinsic motivators are good as well. And if we can be very clear about what those motivators are, we're much more likely to actually get the outcome we want. Everybody wants to, let's say, be a millionaire or whatever. But if we say, okay, what's the cost of not becoming a millionaire? Well, I get to live my lifestyle right now. It's not that big of a deal. And, I'm okay. And what's the rewards of becoming a millionaire? Oh, I get to have this mansion and have this car or whatever. That's not really that great of a driver. If that doesn't seem to be that critical. So that's also the BS meter question I like to ask students. What are the costs / rewards of and of not following through on your commitments? Because if they're not convincing to you, they're probably not convincing to them either. So I would really challenge them and push them on that question, maybe 2, 3, or 4 times to get something really meaningful. Like something where, well, the cost of not following through on my commitments is maybe I'll be considered a failure to my family, or that I won't be able to start the family that I want to start, or I won't be the type of person I want to be for my significant other, whatever it is that driving force is. I think if we can get to something really deep, meaningful, and intentional that drives them to their core, we're much more likely to get the outcomes we want to achieve with our students. So the second set of questions I like to ask are how to help broaden a student's perspective. So often students can be very myopic. They can be like, I just need to do this thing. When in reality, if they could broaden their perspective, they could really open themselves up to getting a lot more things accomplished. So there are 6 questions I like to ask to help a student broaden their perspective. The first question is, what will this situation look like to you in 10 years? What is their life, their career, their working situation, whatever situation they're looking forward to? What does that situation look like to you in 10 years? I like to ask that questions because it allows them to get beyond the immediate short-term, what is happening right now. The second question I like to ask is, what are you willing to try that is different? It's a great question to ask because if you can ask somebody, what are you willing to try that is different? It allows them to accept some form of behavior change. Behavior change is one of the most difficult things to enact in anybody. Corporate environment, personal environment, any environment, family environment, change is difficult. But if we can get them to accept and identify what are you willing to try that is different, you're much more likely to get some small action out of them to do something better. The third question I like to ask is, who do you respect and how might he or she approach the situation you are facing? That's a great question because it gives them a paradigm to look forward to. It gives them a realistic, dang, this is someone I respect. I want to be someone who's respected. I want other people to respect me. I want to follow through in their footsteps as to how they were able to achieve their success because I think I can emulate it in my life. The fourth question is, what is your attitude about this situation? Is it helping you or is it hurting you? This is something where that's the ultimate way to get them to identify their own BS limiting beliefs. Like you telling them that it's the BS limiting belief is one thing. And I think it can be definitely a great paradigm shifter and state shifter. But if you can say, hey, what is an attitude about this situation is it helping you or hurting you? If you can get them to admit that, hey, my attitude about the situation is hurting me, bam, that's like a very deep, eye-opening, wow experience that they're going to have with that situation. The fifth question I like to ask is, what is one of your greatest strengths? How can it serve you in this situation? Everybody's got their own superpower. If you take it long enough to think about what your superpower is, you can really harness it. I'm a big fan of elevating your strengths and not just trying to make your weaknesses mediocre. I'm a big fan of doing what you can to elevate the things that are really, really strong that you've got. For your student, asking them this question can help them identify that. And maybe they haven't thought about their superpowers yet, but I think it's really critical that you get them thinking about that, because then they can help them really improve and boost what they're doing and where they're going. And then the sixth question I like to ask is, what makes you curious about this issue? It's a great question to ask, because by asking what makes you curious about this issue, you're much more likely to drive the results that you like to achieve. Ultimately, you are likely to identify an intrinsic motivator that gets them to really become better in the situation and do more in the situation beyond just some extrinsic driver like money or fearing some form of consequence. By asking them what makes them curious about this issue, you are harnessing something that causes them to get into flow that they can keep working on for hours and hours and hours and realize that they haven't lost any time because they just love doing the work itself. So anyways, those are the 6 questions I love to ask students to help them broaden their perspective. Anyways, that's a workshop for this evening. Do y'all have any questions? Finishing my accountability bottle. Well, if there are no questions, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate y'all being here. We have our next workshop in a couple of weeks. And if you got any questions about your mentor relationship or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to Sharon at support@ambitionemotion.com. We're happy to get y'all set up with your student or just answer any questions you may have. But anyways, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.